The vast majority of people who are learning languages will never become fluent. That's the sad truth. And this is because, among other reasons, they don't speak enough. If you're learning a language and you have learned enough vocabulary and you are watching videos in the language and you understand them and you know how grammar works and all of that is good. But if you don't speak to native speakers, you will never really get good at speaking the language unless you do these things that I'm going to tell you now. So, if you want to try to speak to native speakers because your speaking skills are not very good, then your speaking skills will never get very good because, well, you don't speak to native speakers. So it's a catch-22 situation there, right? So you need to work on your speaking skills on your own. So I'm going to give you the solution. And the solution is called language islands. Language islands are a group of sentences that you prepare for a specific situation, or for a conversation, for a topic, whatever you like to talk about or you normally talk about, for specific situations, things you say at work, a specific conversation you have at the hotel when you arrive, when you are traveling, when meeting people, ordering things in a restaurant, anything you can come up with, you write every single situation, and you write every single sentence that you want to say, that you think you will have to say, in each one of those situations, and conversations and interactions. I'm talking about thousands of sentences. So this is going to take quite a lot of work in the beginning to prepare. But the time spent preparing your language islands is going to save you thousands of hours of your time. Because once you've learned these useful and relevant sentences well, you will be able to speak pretty well in most situations, right? So this is the best investment you can do when it comes to time for language learning. I highly recommend you start working on your language islands from day one of your language learning journey. But even if you're at an intermediate level or even advanced level, if you don't have language islands, please start preparing. I promise you, it's going to be a game changer. Once you've learned several thousand sentences, specific, personalized, relevant sentences for the conversations you normally have or that you want to have, you're going to speak so much better just by doing that, right? So language islands. Hack number one: you start preparing them right now if you haven't already. Then, how do you actually learn them? And I'm going to tell you a bunch of things you should do with it. And these things that you should be doing, maybe not all of them, but at least one or two of them, are shadowing, speed reading, and active recall. Right? So, why shadowing? Well, shadowing is basically, why and what is shadowing? Shadowing is basically listening and repeating at the same time. Kind of like when you listen to a song and you sing alongside at the same time, simultaneously. This is the same. So you should create audio files of your language islands, and then you shadow them. You play it and you speak alongside it. First, you can do it with the text in front of you, and then without the text. And you simply drill the sentences. You say them, listen to them, and repeat after simultaneously, over and over and over again. This will develop muscle memory, and you will get much better at saying all these things, speaking in complete sentences, and saying these relevant sentences. You just drill the sentences, right? You listen and repeat the whole list 10, 20 times maybe from start to finish. This it's 20 or 30 hours of your time. It is work, it's hard work, but it's definitely worth the investment if you want to become fluent. The next part is much easier. It's basically read. Speed read. This is the fastest way, speed reading after all, it's the fastest way to review materials. So if you've got a list of sentences that you need to learn, and sentences that you've written, and then, so they're your own sentences, they're relevant, you've translated them into the language, as long as you already know the vocab, the best way to review them fast is speed reading. By the way, if you don't know speed reading, if you don't know how it works, go watch my tutorials. Because most people read 150, 200 words a minute. You can read 500 words a minute, 800 words a minute, even more, if you learn proper speed reading. And if you know the sentences that you're reading, you can just go through the text over and over again really quickly and review thousands and thousands of sentences a day, every day, until you learn them all and you know them all really, really well. So learn speed reading and then review your language islands over and over again, right? You should do dozens of reviews of the whole list, and also shadowing. And finally, active recall. Active recall is basically translating into the language. You have to remember how to say things. So you take the sentences that you wrote for your language islands in English or whatever your native language is, and you read them in your native language, and you try to say the sentences in the target language, and then you check if you say them correctly or not, and then you keep going. You try to translate the next sentence, always aloud and always looking at the correct answer afterwards, always afterwards, right? So you try, you maybe make mistakes, and then you get the feedback, and you try it again and again and again with the whole list. And if you've been reviewing the list with speed reading and also by shadowing, you should you'll probably make a lot of mistakes in the beginning anyway. But the more you do this exercise, if you've been reviewing them a lot, you'll very quickly stop doing so many mistakes. And if you keep doing it, eventually you'll make basically no mistakes with all the relevant sentences that you wanted to learn, which will help you speak really well. Finally, the last thing you can do is simulate a conversation. And this might sound weird at first, but it's a very effective way to bridge the gap between all these exercises, which are pretty artificial. It's just you drilling sentences and you are repeating sentences aloud and you are translating sentences that you get fed into the target language, but you're not free-flowing there. You're not really having a real conversation which flows naturally. You can do it this way. It's not the same thing as talking to a native speaker, but if you are still shy about talking to native speakers, or if you don't have native speakers you can talk to, you can think of a possible situation that your conversation you want to have, or situation in which you have to speak to native speakers, and you simply start talking as if you were there. You meet some people and, hey, what's your name? Where are you from? Blah, blah. And you do both, like yourself and the other person, and you do the whole conversation in the language. And this is a fantastic way to add more sentences to your language islands, because if you run out of things to say, you didn't know how to say something that you wanted to say, you can just write it down and add it to the language islands and then learn it. Or you come up with interesting ideas while doing this. You just having a conversation with yourself in a specific, whatever context you can think of, and then you realize, oh, that's actually a good idea. I could say that. Or maybe they asked me that, so I hadn't think of that. And then you need a response for that. The more sentences you learn, the better you'll get at just free flowing in the language. The easier it'll be to just have regular conversations, right? If you know 100 sentences really well, but just those 100 sentences, the moment the conversation goes in another direction, then you won't be able to speak because you will not have anything prepared for that. But if you have 2,000 sentences that you've learned really well, then you'll be able to speak way more, and also you'll be able to combine these sentence structures and more vocab that you learn in different ways, and it'll be easier to speak naturally. So the more, it sounds very artificial and kind of fake, but if you memorize enough practical sentences for conversation, and then you practice, as you simulate the conversation, the more sentences you've memorized, the easier it will be to actually have a natural, free-flowing conversation. And again, if you've got native speakers to talk to, please go talk to them. But if you don't have anyone to talk to, or if you are still shy about it, you still don't feel like doing it, then you can do it this way. You can just talk to yourself. You could even record yourself doing it. Maybe don't share it online, but maybe I could show one of my videos doing that. We'll see. But yeah, you can basically prepare language islands, review them over and over again, your own sentences, with just speed reading them over and over. You shadow them, you listen and repeat over and over. You translate into them, you active recall until you can say the sentences correctly most of the time. And then you just simulate a conversation using them until you are able to speak well. This is all you need to do to speak a language fluently, right?